Hello, friends. So, at the outset, I wish to thank Dr. Deepak Govil and Medanta team in having me to deliver this talk on post cardiac arrest care with emphasis on targeted temperature management. So, there is still an ambiguity as to what is the role of targeted temperature management at this point of time with the current available evidence. And now the emphasis has moved from whether there is a non-clarity on whether we should administer targeted temperature management to something called high quality TTM. So I'll keep using the word TTM in the narrative that I would be taking you through. So that is what would be the topics that I would be covering. And if you look at it now, the whole emphasis is on using specialized devices to deliver targeted temperature management as opposed to the conventional archaic type of cooling that we possibly were using at some point of time. So now there is temperature feedback devices, which there is emphasis on using these devices to attain this targeted temperature management. So what is the aim? So when we talk about targeted temperature management, this is in the setting of post-cardiac arrest and hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy that develops. So our whole aim is to minimize this post-anoxic injury or post-hypoxemic injury. And this has been described as the most dramatic complication that can set in after post-cardiac arrest setting. And our whole intent or aim is to improve the outcome in this patient. When we say improve, it is to improve the neurological outcome in these patients. So the rationale for that is, so despite the ambiguity that prevails, for patients with out of hospital cardiac arrest, targeted temperature management is considered as a very important neuroprotective intervention, and it is recommended in some of the guidelines or many of the guidelines. So I'll take you through what is the current evidence that is available so far with regards to uh, the hypothermia or targeted. We'll use the word TTM, targeted temperature management. So the first study came from Australian group, Bernard et al. So the title of this is Treatment of Comatose Survivors of Out of Hospital Cardiac Arrest with Induced Hypothermia. So this was a positive study which put in the emphasis on, or which paved the pathway for our understanding of role of hypothermia or TTM in post-cardiac arrest setting. So the primary outcome of this study was to look at survival with a good neurological function and survival to the hospital discharge. So these patients who were enrolled for this study were maintained at a temperature of 33 degrees within 2 hours of attaining a return of spontaneous circulation. And this has to be instituted or randomized within 12 hours. So this was a small study which came from the Melbourne group in Australia, 77 patients, 43 in the hypothermia group and 34 in the standard group. And if you see, the survival was significantly higher in the hypothermia group, which was 49% as compared to standard group, which was 26%, and that was significant. And what they found is in hypothermia group, the patients had lower cardiac index, had higher SVR, which possibly indicates that they had some cardiac problem or cardiogenic shock, which may have led to the arrest, and they had higher occurrence of hyperglycemia. So this was the finding in this Bernard study, which came in 2002. And they looked at the adverse events between the hypothermia group and the standard group, and they did not find any major difference in the adverse events. So if you look at this table that came in the manuscript, they looked at severe disability, and the hypothermia group did not have any patients with severe disability, which was a good sort of an outcome measure. So following this study from Bernard et al. From Australia, there were two observational studies that came. One came from the France, and these two observational studies were positive studies. So all the positive studies I will be indicating by this thumbs up. So this positive study paved the pathway for further randomized controlled trials, which became the landmark trials, like TTM trial and the Hyperion trial. So this was a French group trial, so which looked at 1,145 patients, and they stratified between the patients with shockable rhythm, which were 708 patients in shockable rhythm, and there were 437 patients in the non-shockable rhythm with PEA or asystole. And they found favorable neurological outcome collectively happened in 30% who got hypothermia. And when they looked at comparison between the shockable and non-shockable, So you would see there was a statistical significance of good outcome in shockable rhythm. If you look at the confidence interval, it was significant. But when they looked at a non-shockable rhythm, there was no significant improvement in the favorable neurological outcome. As you see, the confidence interval indicates that it was not statistically significant. So this study, one could conclude that the benefit of hypothermia seemed to prevail in a shockable rhythm patients as opposed to non-shockable rhythm patients. So this is an important message that came, and this was the thought process at that point of time that prevailed when we were inducing hypothermia, that the benefit would be more to patients who had cardiac arrest due to shockable rhythm. So then this particular study came from JAMA, from the American group, which again doused the flames that hypothermia really did not show any benefit. So this was a study which was a negative study. So here they had patients in two groups, 1,524 in the hypothermia group and 3,714 in the standard group. If you see hospital survival, it was found to be lesser in therapeutic hypothermia group, 27.4 compared to 29. That was significant. And they looked, and again they stratified here between non-shockable rhythm and shockable. So when they looked at the patients who had non-shockable rhythm, the hospital survival was significantly less in the hypothermia group as compared to the standard group. So this was a striking finding, which tells overall hypothermia really did not help in non-shockable. And when they looked at shockable rhythm, they found there was no difference between hypothermia group and standard. So this was a hugely negative thing, which basically put a doubt in people's mind whether if hypothermia really is helpful at all or not. And favorable neurological outcome also was less in hypothermia group as compared to the standard group, 17% compared to 20.5. That was also statistically. So this was a hugely negative study which dented the enthusiasm and tempered the enthusiasm of hypothermia, which sort of was taking shape after the Bernard study and the French study. And then after this, then came this TTM. This was a randomized control. This is one of the landmark trial, and this is the trial that the pundits who would not subscribe to hypothermia would subscribe to. This is the TTM trial, which came from the Swedish group, which compared two temperatures, 33 and 36 degrees. This came in NEJM. So the primary outcome was to look at all-cause mortality. Secondary outcome was to look at the composite endpoints of poor neurological outcome or 180-day deaths. So this was the largest sort of a randomized controlled trial till date, and it had a good statistical methodology put in place. So 950, they looked at out of hospital cardiac arrest, randomized between 33 degree and 36 degree. And they compared the deaths. If you see the deaths, there was no difference between 33 degree and 36 degree group. And they looked at 180-day deaths. Again, there was no difference between 33 and 36 degree group. And this, as I said, this is considered as one of the largest study with good, robust statistical methodology. But one would look at the criticisms of this study. The type of population that were enrolled for the study had too much of heterogeneity in the characteristics. And these patients had a very short resuscitation time. So that is another limitation of this study. And this study, the whole concept of high quality TTM, which we talk now, emphasizes on rapid induction of hypothermia. In this particular study, they had a slow induction of hypothermia, and there was a rapid rewarming. So high quality TTM now emphasizes on slower rewarming to have better neurological. Here there was a rapid rewarming. So these are considered as important limitations of this TTM trial. And this is the graphical representation of the green ones you see is the 36 degree group, and the blue one is the 33 degree group. And again, as I said, they looked at cerebral performance category to look at the neurological outcome. And as you saw in the previous table, there was no difference between 33 degree and 36 degree. As you see, none of the p-values are significant to any of the endpoints in the TTM trial. After this TTM trial, again, the enthusiasm was reinvigorated by this HyperIon trial. So this is the latest trial. If anyone wishes to subscribe to the benefit of hypothermia, then this would be this trial, the French trial, which again came in NEJM in 2019, French group, positive study conducted by Crick-Tigersep group and popularly called as HyperIon trial. So this was also a reasonably robust study, 584 patients. But here you have to bear in mind, they took patients with non-shockable rhythm and they showed a benefit. If you see the previous observational study, which did not show benefit in the non-shockable rhythm. But here it was a randomized control trial showing benefit in the non-shockable. 584 patients from 25 ICUs. They compared two temperatures, TTM 33 and 36. Here they compared 33 degree versus 37 degree. And hypothermia was provided for 24 hours. The primary outcome was to look at day 90 survival with favorable neurological outcome. So here they had 581 patients stratified between 33 and 37. If you look at day 90 survival was significantly higher. It's almost double in 33 degree compared to 37 degree, which was 5.7%. And cerebral performance category of 1 to 2 is a good neurological outcome, and they had a good neurological outcome along with the day 90 survival. And they looked at day 90 deaths. There was no difference between 33 and 37. And they looked at adverse events. There was no difference between 33 and 37 degrees. So now with all the prevailing evidence, TTM being negative, hyperion being positive, and then you had one observational study which said basically non-shockable rhythm, it would not show any difference. So now the whole concept sort of got divided between two groups of thoughts, whether hypothermia really works or not. So it led to a group which were TTM believers and a group which were little skeptical about TTM group. And what this hyperion trial and the TTM trial led to is a little bit of an ambiguity, and there was a signals towards adopting less of TTM in the practice as a standard of care with a nihilistic approach. So then the whole think tank got in together, and the guidelines sort of still adhered to support this TTM, and they called it as a high quality TTM is what one should adopt. Why did that happen? So that you will sort of hear. In 2009, all the big societies came together and said, it is time now to look at TTM as a, like how we now talk about high quality CPR. So they started adhering to high quality TTM. So what they emphasized is TTM has different domains. So the whole cooling has to be standardized, and the maintenance of the cooling has to be standardized, and the way we induce the cooling has to be standardized, and the rewarming has to be standardized, and the maintenance of normothermia. So these are the 5 different components one should have a good clarity when you talk about high quality TTM. And the questions raised, what is the right target to attain? And what is the duration of hypothermia? Whether 24 hours is good enough, 12 hours is good enough, or whether 48 hours is good. So we'll look into the studies, and they looked at whether rewarming rate and what should be the rate of rewarming to have a good outcome measure. So these are some of the questions that societies put themselves and try to dissect out and come out with a sound sort of a protocol. And as we know, the high quality TTM is not standardized, and optimal way that we incorporate TTM in the practice is something that was heavily deliberated after reviewing all these studies. So if you look at the studies, there was no standardization with regards to how hypothermia or TTM was attained. So if you look at the first study, they looked at 33 degree for 24 hours. They used cold fluids. The Bernard study used cold fluids, and they used rectal probe to measure temperature. So if you look at the second study, they looked at 33 degree for 48 hours, and they used endovascular core temperature. So which means there is a lot of methodological difference in all the studies that you have seen, and trying to make conclusions of the difference in the findings possibly is reflective of all the methodological differences that prevailed in these studies. So this is what the authors are trying to emphasize, or the society is trying to. If you look at the third study used for 37 degree for 24 with cold packs and axillary probes. So the way one measured temperature of 33 or 36 and 33 and 37 was by different mechanisms: rectal probe, endovascular probe, axillary probe, and the fourth study looked at gastric probe, and the fifth study looked at the bladder probe. So which means there was no homogeneity in the way temperature was recorded, or in way the target was achieved, in the way the target was maintained. So this is the huge ambiguity that led to differences in the findings in the Hyperion trial, or in the TTM trial, or in the observational studies, or the Bernard study that one could talk. So now we'll try to dissect out what is the right way of achieving or attaining high quality TTM. So the timing of initiation is, we're absolutely sure the timing of initiation is as soon as possible to minimize reperfusion injury. And studies have shown achieving hypothermia with a cold saline does not lead to improvement in the clinical outcome. On the contrary, it led to increase in the early rearrest and leads to increase in the pulmonary edema. And they've looked at the role of intra-arrest TTM with cold saline, and that also showed it did not improve neurological outcome. And this was a study which was published in JAMA by US group. So which goes on to say that using cold saline as a tool to achieve hypothermia will not lead to good neurological outcome. So that is what we could sort of decipher. And a lot of work has happened by Swedish group. So the Swedish group, these are the two studies which looked at attaining hypothermia in the intra-arrest TTM in the shockable rhythm with transnasal probes, and they found some potential benefit. So the way one would cool, there is emphasis towards using specific devices to attain the cooling as opposed to the crude way of putting ice packs or putting cold saline, because these have not shown to attain the targets and maintain the target for the time that we would have in mind. So this is something very important move towards what we call as high quality TTM. And what about temperature measurement? So the recommendation is one should measure the core temperature, and the core temperature is reasonably accurate when you do it intra esophageal temperature monitoring or bladder temperature monitoring, or by putting the probe in the vessel. So either it can be artery or vessel. So these are found to be truly reflective of core temperature. So the esophageal temperature, the bladder temperature, or temperature probe within the vessel, blood vessel. And it has been found when there is a hypoxic brain injury, the brain temperature goes up by 0.4 to 2 degree, it will be higher. So there is an emphasis that one needs to accurately measure the core temperature, keeping this in mind to attain the lower temperatures. And all this other crude way of measuring temperature, which has been done in the previous studies, like axillary, oral, or tympanic, or even rectal temperature, which some of the studies have done, or are to be shunned, because these are not accurate and these are not a good reflection of the core temperature. And if you see, some of the studies have used the episodic temperature, and there is now move towards continuous recording of temperature to absolutely ensure there is no huge temperature variability. Once you say 33 degree, the whole direction of our thought is to maintain temperature at 33 degree and not to have variability beyond 33 or less than 33. So if you fix a temperature, the whole emphasis is on maintaining the temperature for 24 hours and not have too much temperature variability, because that has not shown to influence good neurological outcome. And what is the target temperature? As you have seen, the studies have looked at 33, 34, 36, and 37 degree. But as I said, the essence is controlling the temperature at the target what you have identified or what you have defined. If it is 33, the temperature has to be maintained at 33 without variability. And there are studies which have shown maintaining temperature at 36 degree has been found to have a pitfalls or difficulty. The compliance has been poor. And when attempts are made to maintain at 36 degree, so the amount of the cumulative time at which the exact 36 degrees maintained was found to be less. And these patients had 15% reduction in favorable neurological outcomes. So there is a sort of a de-emphasis on maintaining at 36, maybe less than 36, 33, 34 may be more desirable because outcomes were found to be better. So given this sort of an ambiguity, the societies have sort of agreed upon this. So if you have a patient where your priority is to reduce the brain edema, and where the intensity of the brain injury is very severe with increased brain edema, or where a situation where there is a prolonged CPR where you would foresee that the neurological outcome is going to be poor, or where patients have had seizures after this arrest. So these are severe, these are reflection of severe injury to the brain, where one could sort of get inclined towards maintaining lower temperatures of 33 degrees. And maybe there are a subset of patients where 36 degree has to be adopted. Who are these patients? These are the patients who have coagulopathy. Suppose a polytrauma patient where you have an issue dealing with coagulopathy and bleeding. So that is where you would possibly inclined towards maintaining 36 degree as opposed to 33, because you wouldn't wish to worsen the coagulopathy, or where they are hemodynamically unstable, because maintaining much colder temperature may lead to more of hemodynamic compromise. So this is the thought process. So if you have a patient where your brain is severely injured and your whole intent is to reduce the injury to the brain, where there has been a seizure or a prolonged cardiac arrest, So there you would tend to move towards 33°. Where you have a polytrauma situation with coagulopathy issue, you would move towards maintaining 36°. That is the thought process that we have agreed upon. And now the question is, what is the duration of the cooling phase? So again, there is a debate whether 24 hours is good enough, or we should extend it to 48 hours or 12 hours. So the consensus is that cooling phase has to be at least for 24 hours. So let's look into the evidence. So this was a study which came from the Scandinavian group, which came from Denmark, Norway, and Swiss group. They did a study looking at 48 and 24 hours, whether there was any difference. So the primary outcome was to look at 6 months neurological outcome, and they looked at attaining a good cerebral performance category of 1 to 2, which is a good neurological outcome. Second outcome was to look at 6 months mortality and adverse events. What did they find? They had 351 patients, 176 where they got 24 hours TTM, 175 who got 48 hours TTM. So when they looked at favorable neurological outcome, there was no difference between 24 hours and 48 hours. When they looked at 6 months mortality, again, there was no difference between the 24 hours and 48 hours. When they looked at adverse events, it was more in the 48 hours group, 97%, that was significant. And the ICU length of stay also was prolonged in the 48 hours TTM group. So, and the hospital length of stay, there was no difference. So when you look at this study with the available evidence, 24 hours seems to be good enough, and extending it to 48 hours may not confer additional benefits. On the contrary, we may tend to have more adverse events. But this may not apply to the newborns, because in this particular study from Canada, it showed the prolonged cooling, 72 hours in the newborns, led to more promising results. So, but we are talking about adult population, 24 hours of cooling is good enough. And what about the debate about the rewarming phase? As I said, rapid rewarming has to be shunned, because rapid rewarming has not led to improving the neurological outcomes. The whole essence is to do the slow rewarming. And it is suggested that these rewarming devices have to be used, like how you use room temperature in or conditioning of the air. So here in these devices, you can sort of give an input or designate as to at what degree it has to be rewarmed. And the recommendation is 0.15 to 0.25 degrees centigrade per hour. It should be the rewarming rates. So that is something which is again emphasized. And slow and controlled rewarming rate is found to be feasible with these sort of devices. And these are the two studies, one from Korea and Japan, which showed slow rewarming with these rewarming devices leads to better neurological outcome. And most important is, after rewarming, it has to be absolutely ensured that normothermia is maintained for at least 48 hours, because if normothermia is not maintained after rewarming, then again it leads to bad outcome. And more so, fever is really bad, because this is like a reperfusion. So rewarming, if you rapidly do, there may be a hypothetical thought process of causing increased radical production, leading to local inflammation and leading to increase in the temperature. That needs to be avoided. That was shown from this study. So for 48 hours, normothermia after rewarming is quintessential and is emphasized as being very important. And now the question remains, we have been talking about high quality TTM. So how do we achieve this high quality TTM? So one thing we know is the devices what you use will attain the normothermia, but there are a lot of physiological turbulences that happen. You have to use pharmacologic therapy. So when we start cooling, obviously the shivering will set in, and the shivering leads to heat generation and leads to increased duration to induce the target temperature. Suppose we have 33° in mind. Once patient starts shivering, as I said, the induction into hypothermia has to be very rapid. And if you take longer time, again, the purpose won't be served. And when the shivering happens, there will be a lot of temperature. So our intent is to fixate the temperature at 33 or 34 or 35 and not to have variability. So when shivering happens, there is a temperature variability. And when shivering happens, there'll be faster rewarming. So the way to circumvent that is to deepen the sedation and analgesia with any of the short-acting standard of care that we would give, maybe midazolam, or if hemodynamically stable, you could use propofol or fentanyl or remifentanil. And this sedation and analgesia could be stopped after you have rewarmed and normothermia is achieved. And magnesium sulfate and alpha agonists could be used as an adjunct to mitigate this shivering aspect. And in severe cases, neuromuscular blockade is found to be effective in attaining this hypothermia and inducing this in an acute way. and maintaining it at that level. And bolus or continuous infusion could be adopted. Paracetamol and NSAIDs have shown to have limited role. And there is an index called body shivering assessment score one could use to achieve this high quality TTM. So these are some of the modalities that one could adopt. So what about device selection? So this is what we need to again reemphasize. So because when we 10 years back, when the hypothermia concept came, we used to use cold saline bags or cold saline to induce hypothermia. But now we have moved away, and there is emphasis to using the temperature feedback devices, which we call it as TFT or TFS. And these are the devices which maintain the target temperature for the designated period of time that you would have defined. And these devices help you to rapidly attain the target temperature. And these devices tend to reduce the temperature variability. And these devices, most importantly, help in slow rewarming that you define or you feed the input into these devices. And the studies have shown maintaining this core temperature appropriately with these temperature feedback systems reduces the probability of poor neurological outcomes. So that was shown in this Belgian study. So for the listeners, the whole investment and emphasis is to, when you are considering adopting high quality TTM, then we need to move towards these devices which ensure that target temperature is maintained without too much of variability in temperature, and slow rewarming is ensured. So when you talk about conclusions, the whole conclusions is to come out with a standardized protocol to attain. So the buzzword is we are moving from hypothermia to targeted temperature management. And now there is movement from targeted temperature management to high quality temperature management, where there is no sort of a discrepancy in the way that modalities are adopted to attain those targets. I will talk about it. And it is very clearly shown that low quality TTM, if you do it crudely by putting saline bags and not maintaining the target, the studies have shown it will not lead to the envisaged benefit that you have in mind. So what do we mean by low quality TTM? So low quality TTM is where you use ice packs or cold saline to attain hypothermia, where we do not have specific target. So when I say target, it has to be a number, either 33 or 34 or 35 or 36. So you fix one temperature and you have to maintain at that temperature, and not to have variation between 33 to 36 or anything that you define. And shivering has to be rigorously managed, because shivering leads to temperature variability, which will interfere with the good neurological outcome that we would have in mind. And absolutely rigorous fever control, because that is very much emphasized. And there is no role for intermittent peripheral temperature. You have to do core temperature with a esophageal probe or a bladder probe or from the vascular probe. And the induction, slow induction is a bad TTM or a low quality TTM. And high variability of temperature is a low quality TTM. And uncontrolled rewarming is a low quality TTM. So as I said, the high quality TTM involves 4 aspects. One is the early initiation phase, where you would obviously use certain devices to achieve early initiation, and the cooling phase, where the maintenance of the target temperature is done with the core temperature probes, and inducing very fast and maintaining at that target temperature. And then you have this methods of cooling, where you use temperature feedback devices. That is something that is emphasized, and shivering has to be managed. And post cooling, the emphasis is on slow rewarming and maintaining normothermia for at least 48 hours after rewarming. So these are the 4 sort of segments in the TTM that one should adopt to call yourself as attaining high quality TTM. So then how do we define high quality? High quality TTM is where cooling is done with surface or endovascular methods, and continuous core temperature is monitored, and the induction of temperature has to be rapid with low variability, and slow rewarming at a rate that we just discussed, and use temperature feedback devices to attain the target temperature. And high quality is to have a specific target that either you fix it 33, 34, 36. So obviously, if your whole motive or your goal is to protect the brain, and you envisage that the severity of the brain is what needs to be addressed, then you sort of lean towards 33 degree. But if you have a bleeding issues or hemodynamic issues, then you can move towards higher temperature of 35 to 36. And shivering management has to be protocolized, and there is no room for shivering, because once the shivering sets in, there will be temperature variability, and fever has to be very rigorously controlled. So because of this ambiguity, there are two new trials. So the TTM, as you saw, which was a negative trial, they're coming out with a TTM2 by the Swedish group. And the results of this study is meant to be out by April 2022. So obviously we could look at these results to see whether we have conclusive sort of a conclusions on whether TTM would really make a difference. And this is another study by the French group, which was expected to complete in 2020, which is looking at the speed of rewarming, because we are saying that slower the rewarming, better is the outcome. Whether that holds good is what the hypothesis this French group is testing, called isocrate study. So maybe we should look forward for these studies to see whether we should adopt TTM, or I have to use the word high quality TTM, as a standard of care for all cardiac arrest. So thank you very much. So I would end my talk with this nice quote. Your greatness is not what you have, it's what you give. So you can visit my website to rehear to this lecture to gain clarity and insights. So thank you all.